So this was the drawing that I did yesterday, and emotions was the theme, the general. Only because of the the image. Found this image, and that's an emotional image. I'll talk about drawing emotions. So all this stuff's planned, you know. It's all thought through. I was thinking that I should do. I've just seen a guy who does this, and his like trajectories are immense, and there's such logistical constructions. These videos he does, and I don't know how he finds the time. Personally, I just want to do this. You know what I mean? Just to spend three or 4 days putting together some fancy how-to. I can't. You know, I just want to do this. This is what I want to do. So, and I want to share it with you. And that's it. Just me and you, nobody else. There's only two of us. All right. So, and that was it. I found this image. What a great image. I'll just draw that and talk about what resonates and everything else. So, and it's important. Capturing emotion is probably the most important thing about, you know, a portrait. I don't just mean smiling, laughing, sadness, or whatever, or dreaming, as this one might be. I'm talking about that deeper thing. The guy that I'm going to draw now actually is an emotional thing. Is an emotional image. Another. This is mad. These eyebrows, like apparently, this is a sign of intelligence. I'm going to stop cutting mine then. Yeah, but so that was yesterday afternoon, and I tend to draw all in one session. I don't sort of break off and then come back to it, mainly because I work so quickly, I suppose. And also because it doesn't follow that, you know, you have to connect to the subject. You have to maintain that emotional connection during the process of making the portrait. It drives everything. It's not just about the mechanics of it all, because that's just reproduction. This is about much more than just how to get the perfect photograph in order to see the shadows and all that nonsense. This is much more about art. So the emotional connection thing for me is an integral part. You know, the feeling, the subject thing. Even though I know it's a photograph, but as I said before, there are ways to do that. But so I don't want to break that connection, that emotional connection. It's a bit like, and I'll talk about the first time you meet somebody. In fact, I did the handshake yesterday morning, and it's a bit like that. You know, the second time you meet someone, you feel differently about them. It may have been your first impression might have been misaligned, shall we say. So when you come back to see them again, they're not quite the person you thought they were. The problem so that's the kind of problem that I have with reconnecting my emotional state to a subject. So consequently, I try not to do it in more than one session. So that's the logic anyway. So I'm explaining why I try and do it all in one sitting. But coming back to it, if I haven't nailed something, if it's not quite working, the only thing that I would change or improve on will be practical things, the way the light hits it, or, you know, it's like I did just then. I just made that less of a darker spot, and, you know, sort of darker under the chin there, and it gives the impression of the chin. You know, this is practical stuff. It gives the chin that roll back. You know, having a definite hard line around it was pulling it forward. So, you know, knocking it back, even though it's still a little. You can see it there, can't you? You can see how it's pushing the chin forward. We need the chin to actually. But this is practical things. This is nothing to do with will it spoil it or will it not. You know, so the fear of me. Well, coming back to this drawing, had it been halfway through it, I'd have a different response to it. But the idea that maybe this next mark will spoil it, so I fear that it will not work out. So the fear thing, it comes in all shapes and sizes. I mean, if I got through halfway through a watercolor, I got to this point where it was, and I was, you know, steaming ahead and got to the middle point, or maybe 2/3 way, I'd be struck by fear that whatever I did next it would spoil it, because that's the nature of watercolor. You know, any minute it's gonna just go off, and not be right. And but I had that fear. And the fear spread from. So it started with I just go, oh yeah, I'm going to do this watercolor, and it's real great. I'm really enjoying it, and I get to a third through or 2/3 through or whatever, and fear. But so it started getting to be halfway through it, and it started getting to be so a quarter way through it. Then it started to be the lines that I was making was where the fear attacked me, and then ultimately it was before I started. So the thing was that I gave in to the fear. I stopped making portraits, making art. I didn't make portraits, but I stopped making art because of the fear of. Well, there were two reasons. A, I needed to earn a living, so I couldn't do it. And I'm an all-in sort of guy. If I'm going to do something, it's going to be 100%. You know what I mean? So I'm not kind of, I'll just do it as a hobby. It could never be. I can't have hobbies. I could never have hobbies because I'm all in. I'm either doing this or not. Whether or not I've got to feed my kids, so I couldn't, I couldn't interfere with that. So that was the primary reason, I think, that when I look back on it. But I still had this trepidation, this fear of failure, that it wouldn't work out right, it wouldn't be any good, it wouldn't be worth anything. There's the phrase that everybody. I've seen a woman talking about this morning about not being able to make a living at it, and I sympathise. And but that's the worthlessness thing. And so you can see why people would lean towards the practical routes. All the videos you see about how to do this, and improve it by this amount. You can see why people lean towards that, because it's almost saying, I guarantee you won't have an outcome. Well, I can tell you now that if you do it from a point of view of pure creative intention, you will always have the best outcome, right? This is nothing to do with practical skills. Practical skills are irrelevant to the creation of art. They are just the means to manifest it. And you'll gather what you need. You'll go in the tool shed and pick up the tools you need. You won't walk around with a bag full of tools you won't need. You'll actually only acquire what you need if your creative intention is clear. And that's the problem that people have. That's the reason why they have fear, because they fear they may not meet a standard. Somebody else has their own whatever. So expectations are at the root of it. Their expectations, their definition of what this is, all those things all create this fear. And the real sadness of it all is, apart from the fact that there are lots of people who don't manage to do this or get to a point where their trueness is actually manifest, their true creativity is manifest, and that's a sadness. But let me just square this. More paper. Last two pieces of this paper. But the problem is that the sadness. And the problem is that the people are that I don't know if it's persuaded, but they're of a. Let me just get this kind of something like. I just want to know where he is. That's all on the paper. No idea. I tell you what, it looks like Lord Olivier. I think that might be who it is. But yeah. Where am I? Yeah. So the fear thing, the fear of failure, the fear of not meeting a standard, their own or somebody else's, and it's particularly difficult with this kind of stuff because portraits are always laden with expectations, and but allowing that to be now. This is another thing with me. I don't know if it's fortunate or if it's just simply a coward's way, but I don't do it for anybody else. I don't think of it being a product, that I'm going to sell. I don't think of it as being someone else's decision as to whether it's good or bad. I don't think of it anything like that. So I kind of insulate or lock myself in a room of which I literally do. It's more more than just in a psychological way, but I kind of remove myself from any of those things. And I've said this. This is when I after the cancer I did the joy thing, and I talked to people about just take the joy out of your life. The things that don't bring you joy, take them out of your life. And that time I went for a CT scan, and the woman asked me, she said, "You're cheerful." And I told her why, and told her about removing things that don't bring her joy. And she said, "Does that work with husbands as well?" Yeah, it does. It does. Anything that doesn't bring you joy, take it out. And so I did that with this. If something prevented me from experiencing the unfettered um, um, creativity that I know that's desperate to get out of me. If something got in the way of all that, then it got removed, and that might well be this need to sell or need to please other people, which ultimately may result in selling. So as I said, I don't know whether that's a coward's way out or whether or not it's just a realization of the fact that these are the factors that were weighing heavy on me as a young man 30 odd years ago, were in fact the causes and the reason why I stopped, and the why, in a way, what I drew at the time was the way it was. Because I did and I've seen this recently. Where I did scenes. I was drawn to drawing scenes or painting scenes, the kind of seaside stuff, where sometimes and then sometimes the people in the scenes. So it's just typical, what everybody else does. And that was because what everybody else does. It's because of that's the reason why I did it. And that seems to be one of the reasons. Now that I do this, I don't do this because anyway, because this is how other people do it. I think that the more that I've sort of analysed this and got to the bottom of all this, I see that it manifests in a way that seems to be quite defiant, rebellious. And it's not. I'm not trying to rebel against anything. I'm just trying to find my own way of doing it. That's the reality of it all. So I'm just trying to find my way of getting my creativity to synchronize with what or the things that I do to synchronize with my creativity. Somebody talked about talent this morning. I was saying that talent is when you manifest your creative consciousness. And that's a thing that some artists can do it, some artists can't. Some artists rely on the production side because they've got the dexterity or whatever else to be able to manage the medium, to corral the medium and the tools. So some artists do that and call themselves artists as a consequence, because it in all intents and purposes looks like art, and to many people it is. But there are artists who are able to connect with their creative consciousness, and that is what people perceive to be talent. It's just a case that they've allowed themselves to connect with it, to connect with their inner creativity, because everyone's got it. It's just that most people, it either gets buried through life, or they're not inclined, if you like, because they're subdued by material things. But the fear, the thing about it is that once you recognize that it is about your creative intention, your desire to create, and not simply about how well you can replicate the world. Well, there's two things that happen. First of all, you kind of become it's as if you've been set free. That's probably what it is. You no longer worry what people are going to say about what you do. So you're fearless, It no longer matters whether or not you got the line exactly. You see it on what I do. It no longer matters if the line's exactly like what it should be. All those sort of things become incidental. It works or it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not a case of if that line's not exactly accurate, or it's a failure, and that's the problem. A lot of people with the fear thing will fear that the next mark, because they're too bothered about the precision aspect of it all. But this release that happens has two effects. It has this the way it manifests in the way you draw. The lines. It has that effect, but the other effect is that it doesn't conform to the consistency, if you know what I mean. I think part of the consciousness is, or the creative consciousness is, because it's connected to your emotions. It's going to be driven by and affected by other things, not just whether or not you're hungry or thirsty, or you need sleep, or the usual sort of things that I suffer from. It's not just those things. Your emotional state will influence the way that you respond, and consequently, you can't guarantee that everything that you do will be exactly the same. It will feel the same. It will, conform to the rules, if you like. That this is, the tonal thing is an interesting, because I did that color, using seeing tones in color demonstration, and in a way it jazzed a little bit. I can't think where it is now, but the way that the colors were working, they were almost jazzing against each other. They were all a bit jangly, and the danger is that you see that as a failure, because it didn't replicate the shape or the form or whatever, because it didn't conform to the rules, if you like. But that was my response. That was my creative response. And in a way, as I say, this connection with your creative consciousness will do things that are all about your response. It's not about whether or not it looks like an exact copy of a face. It might not conform to the rules, so to speak, and you might get areas where the tones are all out of whack because it's too light and it forces things forward and all. But at the same time, the creative consciousness is saying to you, yeah, but that's still, you can still see the face in that, like the one this morning I've just shown you. You can still see the face in those marks, and this is probably a good example of it. It's despite the eye not being drawn there, it still feels like the eye is in there. So it's that kind of creative depth that has nothing to do with my technical application of the charcoal, or whether or not it's a or even if it's tonally correct. It's more to do with my response to that eye, that part of the face, those components within the face. It's more to do with that. So this idea of fear has nothing. It has no bearing whatsoever in there. It doesn't. There isn't, because it's not considered. If it's not considered to be a failure or success or meeting a standard or whatever else, then there can be no. There can be no fear. You can't. It's not like you're Evel Knievel and jumping over a bunch of cars or over a ravine or whatever. That's that's fear. Yeah, but this is not like that at all. This is response, and that, I think, is what people don't get. They don't get that drawing is a response to the world, and to some, I would say that when you're a child, it's a way of figuring out the world, but it's not a case of drawing is always this, so therefore you must do this. It can't be that. Not if it's going to be. It can be if you're just going to be a person that copies photographs. then definitely is that. Drawing is always that. Drawing is always a bunch of lines that represent the eye and the shadows and all the rest of it. But if it's not about just copying photograph, if it's more about your view of the world, then let it be that your view of the world. That's it. But as I said, the fear aspect of it, if you're talking about mindset and preparation, which is my thing anyway, the first part is you've got to be clear on what you want to do with this. Your intention has to be clear, and that's not complicated. Mine is simple. I just want to have fun doing it. I just enjoy doing this. So that's my intention, and that's my passcode, if you like. That's the thing that releases my creative consciousness. That's what unlocks the door. I just simply love doing this. And then after that, as a natural consequence of that previous statement, the intention aspect of it, I have no expectations other than to enjoy doing it. So if it's really hard, you know what I mean? I've got to get the geometry of this. If it's all that nonsense, I can't do it. It's just not going to be fun for me. Maths was not my subject at school, although I became a programmer. But that's nothing to do with maths. Don't let people tell you any differently. It's something to do with logic and thinking, and, full enough, creativity. But that's the thing. If it's something that is going to be a difficult thing to do, then I won't do it. So that's the second part of it. You've got to remove all expectations. And the third thing is you've got to always love what you do. The outcome. You can never hate what you do. You can never dislike what you do or tell yourself you failed. You can't. You can't fail if you've got no expectations. So that's the trick of it. But the fear that failure brings, or the fear of not complying or meeting somebody's standard and all those sort of things, which is failure, I suppose. That's a silly thing. That's a nonsense thing. That's a thing. I don't know whether or not it's to do with age, but I can't. Why would anybody fear doing this? It doesn't make sense, does it? You can't fear doing this. You can fear, I spent all that time on it, and then I just put that. Well, if you spend loads of time on something, and it's a replication thing, then I understand that, because it's like, you're building a building, and the last brick you put in it isn't in the right place, all that kind of stuff. I get all that. But if you are a creative soul and it's about your, manifesting your creativity, then there is no fear. There is no fear when it comes to, those t-shirts they used to have with, was it skateboarding, snowboarding, or surfboarding, or something like that? No fear was the. I think it might have been snowboarding, Anyway, I remember seeing stickers with it on cars. They had to stick on cars. No fear. You could do one of those for, I'm a fearless artist. I'm doing it without a net. You know what I mean? My trapeze analogy. I draw without a net. That's my problem, you see. That's my thing. I draw without a net. Right. So in a way, this has probably been my illustration of fearless drawing, because you can tell I'm not really. There's nothing that is conforming, the lines and one of the things I like about this sort of fearless approach is that you will get, and it will happen, you will get things that don't meet the expectations of what this should be, and yet still meet the expectations of what it should be. The interesting one where I saw somebody talking this morning about, the depth within an image before working with it. I've told you before, I always fix the levels on an image, and I always take things out of focus if they're not already. I don't like the the detail aspect to it being some kind of overriding thing. And there are times when, and I've done it a couple of times, when there's been an image. I mean, one of the things that I would say that, particularly if you've got a more creative approach to it, is that you might interpret. A friend of mine, I can't pronounce her name, Asini, I think it is, and same with Guerrilla Brigade. If you look at what they do, they're not just copies of photographs. They're not. I mean, they use photo references, obviously you can tell, but the way they interpret them, their creative response is different to your typical, let's see if we can copy this photograph really, really well. You know, those kind of artists are, driven by the technicalities of doing it, and fair enough, that's what they choose to do, and I'm no problem with that at all. It's just there are times when the creative interpretation of things, it's still a portrait, it's still a face, but it's, I don't know. When this lady does it, a senior, I think her name is Sini, it's just like, and Guerrilla Brigade, look at what he does, and that guy can draw. If you want to compare him to the producers, this guy can really do it. But there are times when he chooses not to, because the concept, his response doesn't require that, and that's in a way I like that. I like the idea of it really not the factors like there's not enough depth in the image or whatever. All of those things become irrelevant because of the way that they're seeing the image, and the way they're responding to the image. So I like that because of the the unpredictability of it all. As I said, I did a drawing of a girl that. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I when it came to the face, it just was all bland. I mean, I'm not a fan of the opaline faces. When Sargent drew there was just an eye and very little modelling. I'm not really a fan of that. It's just not. It's just boring to me. I like it. I like there to be like this. There's all sorts of tonal goings on, and but I'd done this drawing, and it had no tonal range in it at all in the face, and it worked perfectly. It just was just how it should be. So I can't, and it wasn't intentional. It's just how it worked out. But I'm in the moment when I'm doing it. So as I am with this, and it's basically as I see it evolve, and whether or not it needs certain other things, and so on and so forth. It's all those kind of in the moment responses, and it may not be that I need to replicate the tonal depth in order to capture this essence. It may not be that I need that. So going back to the fearless thing, it's hard. It's easy for me to say it because, as I said, I'm a cheater. I'm locked away and not wanting to compete or sell or all those sort of things. So I have the luxury of being able to say, I don't give a damn how it turns out. Some people don't have that luxury, and some people don't have that luxury for because of their own psyche. That is, in a way, that's the one thing. The rest of you will just want to do it for a living and want to sell commissions and whatever. Go for it. I'm 100% behind you. Just stay strong, kind of thing. But for those that want to just make art and express their creativity, you have complete control of your psychological approach to this. So you're gonna, that's a luxury that the guys that have to make a living out of it don't have. So make sure you recognize that and exploit that luxury. Take advantage of that luxury, but never, and as I say, unless even when are trying to sell this stuff, don't let fear be a limiter. Yeah, I'm going to You see that what that happens like that. That's just, to me, that's just, I know people would say, "Oh, he's not drawing it. He's not, look at that, he's not drawing the eye." I love all that. I love all that. The accidental, incidental kind of, serendipitous thing that happens. It's just, it transcends production. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I'd aim for in a drawing. I want something that's more than production. So did I follow the rules? Did I do the circles and the geometry and all that kind of, no, I didn't. And it's great that I didn't. I don't want to be a rule follower. I think that's probably the character flaw that I've got. I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be like anybody else but me. But as I said, it's back to the intention. If your intention is to make copies of photographs, then you've got to follow the rules. I think you can't not go along with the, you should do it like this kind of thing. I think you've got to do that. But I just like doing this. I just like, yeah. See, the other thing about it is when I'm doing this and as things are building as they should, as I feel they should, they're part of this response thing. As I feel them building, and this is charcoal's magic, it's very satisfying in the process of doing it. This is when I get the joy, the adrenaline thing, is just kicking in all the time. So. And this is the reason why I do it. It's as simple as that. It's when you saw me doing the lady with the emotions yesterday, I might have been talking about emotional representation or trying to connect to their emotions and all the rest of it, but I was just having a ball doing this as I am doing now. So, which is again is I could never fear doing this. It's such a luxury to be able to do this. Like I said before, if you've got the luxury of being able to create today, make sure you do it for yourself and not for someone else. Right, I'm going to leave it at that because it's at a stage. I've got probably another half an hour on it, and it'll be done. But it's at that stage where there's too much of the of good stuff happening that I don't get it sucked into the doing. Because I love doing it, and stopping doing it it's completely different to the thing of I stop when I've caught the essence, because in effect I've caught the essence now. But I love doing this, so it's a little bit like when someone said to me in the studio all those years ago, "When is it finished?" And I always used to say, "When you've taken it off me." You know what I mean? That's when I'll stop. Not a good way to look at things, by the way, because that inevitably results in overworking. But if you've experienced in enough is enough kind of approach to it, then it's not that much of a problem. But it can be if you're a detail driven type of person, because you'll be details matter, all that kind of stuff, and you'll just be at it all the time. You spend weeks on a drawing. People spend weeks on drawings, months sometimes. I've seen these people that do months on a drawing. That's just incredible. I mean, it is a production, obviously. You're way past the emotional connection stage with that, but people do spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And a lot of the time, I think it's more therapy than it is, art. Although people consider those to be the same thing, but I'm not sure. I know why it works, but I'm not sure you just demote art to being therapy. Yeah, it's great. It helps people a lot. And it helps me a lot anyway. So, but let's think about it. It's a little bit more sophisticated than just a tablet to be prescribed. I think if I was to analyze it, when I'm talking about the creative consciousness thing, if you were saying that a bunch of old people in a home were allowed to color and draw and all the rest of it, it's simply that they're tapping into their creative consciousness. It's probably never been used all their life. This is as fresh, new as if it was the day they were born. This is what they're connecting to, and it's not adulterated by life and all its struggles and all the stuff, the physical illnesses that we suffer, and it's more fundamental and primitive and primal inside us. I don't want to go there anyway because that sounds like I'm pontificating. But anyway, so you know what I'm saying? Just go for it. I've done this before, and I said go for it, and I think it sounds naff. You remember in the 90s when everybody said just go for it, but it's kind of is like that. You have to get them other bits sorted out. Sort out your reason first. Reason why are you doing this? And then the second one is don't do it for anybody else. Get rid of all your expectations. And then thirdly, just love what you do. The outcome. Just love it. Don't matter if it's great or by somebody else's standards. If you've done it for the right reasons, it will always be great. You cannot fail. Anyway, let's say I'm going to leave it now. Spend about another hour, just fiddling with little tones and sort out the implication. But one of the things, just going back to the doing, one of the things about the fearless approach is that there are inevitable things that happen unconsciously, like this eye, and the same with the mouth. I haven't drawn any mouth on there, but look how that looks like a mouth, and those are the things that you want to treasure, because those are the things that your subconsciousness has, your creative consciousness has as manifest. So be careful with those things, because they're not just accidents. They are your creativity manifesting in those very moments, and that's you want to pressure. They are precious. Those are the bits that make what you do special. So just make sure you see those and hang on to them. Don't lose them with technicalities, of improving tones or whatever the other thing that you think you must do. So as I say, right, I'm going to go, and I'll catch you later. Got a lesson later. Well, a demo for the members, but please remember I'm stopping the membership thing, so don't be signing up for it, because it's going to get complicated trying to get out of it. So I'll catch you later.